Hey everybody, this is Tom Salemi. Welcome back to the DeviceTalks weekly podcast. We have a jam-packed episode for you today. Our main star is Celine Martin. She's company group chairman of Cardiovascular and Specialty Services Group at Johnson & Johnson. I spoke with Celine this week about her work at J&J, her career at J&J. She gives a little advice, and where her business and J&J Medtech are headed. So make sure you check that interview out. Before that, though, we were happy to have Paul Grand, the CEO of Medtech Innovator, join us for the Newmarker's Newsmakers. Paul added a lot of great insight to the individual items, including one that was really more personal for him, and I really appreciate the input that he gave on that one. So make sure you listen to the Newmarker's Newsmakers +1, because Paul, Chris, and I determined that mass device readers missed a big story, and we wanted to add our 2 cents. So make sure you check that out. Paul's going to also talk about an upcoming deadline for his Medtech Innovator program. Make sure you check that one out. You don't want to miss it. Anyone running a privately held medical device company should listen. And finally, before we begin this episode, I wanted to bring in our sponsor, Nordson Medical. I'm speaking with David Sagans. He's a vice president at Nordson Medical. David, tell me about Nordson Medical. What are your capabilities and where are you located?
Nordson Medical is a global expert in the design, development, and manufacturing of complex medical devices and component technologies. We serve interventional, surgical, and specialized medical markets as the engine of innovations that help our OEM customers save and enhance patients' lives. Today's Nordson Medical has more than 50 years in the making. Since the first Nordson Medical facility opened in 1968, we've been strategically building our capabilities to offer customers a complete solution to their medical device development needs. This strategic build-out of capabilities has led Nordson Medical to have a global footprint of 14 development and manufacturing locations spanning the U.S., Mexico, Europe, and Israel, allowing us to work directly with our customers where they are located.
We'll hear more from Dave Sagans a little later in the episode. If you'd like to find out more about Nordson Medical right now, go to its website, nordsonmedical.com. And Nordson is spelled Nordson. nordsonmedical.com. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Chris Newmarker, how are you, sir?
Doing well, Tom. Doing well. We're moving through December.
We are. We've got one more podcast left after today. We'll have a pod in 2022. We'll be back in 2023, but we'll be won't be putting one out on, what would that be? What's next? So today's I should have done this math in my before. So today's the 9th. Next week's the 16th. Yes. We will have one on the 16th. Oh wait, no, we'll have two more. We'll have the 16th and the 23rd.
There we go.
I don't know why I was rushing things. I was kind of frantic today. I thought I had like one more week to get stuff done. Oh, whew. Yeah. I feel so much better.
You just feel the relief pouring over you.
Oh, yes.
But this is extra special today because we've got a guest.
We do have a guest. I was about to say we could have just held Paul Grand off until next week. We didn't have to rush him on this week, but he's here.
Paul here. It's awesome.
Welcome.
Hey guys, good to be back in the booth.
You got your big microphone going on there. You sound super sharp, super clear. So
love it.
Well, I got to be able to compete with you guys. I listen to you, as you guys know. I'm an avid fan, and I listen to you, and you guys sound so professional. And then I come on and I sound like I'm in an echoey basement bathroom or something. So
you're sounding like a pro today, man. It's great.
Before we get into the Newsmakers, the Newmarker's Newsmakers, Chris, I have a confession to make.
Confession.
A couple of weeks ago, when you weren't on the show, I recorded a message about. Well, I recorded the message for the podcast, and in closing about Twitter, I said, "Go on Twitter, check out my Wordle scores," and I bragged about how good I am at Wordle, and I was on a roll. I was like Steph Curry, like 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. I was like crushing it.
Did you cross a picket line, Tom?
I didn't cross a picket line, but I bragged about my Wordle capabilities, and I've kind of been in the toilet ever since. I'm still getting them, but I'm like 4s and 5s now. It's becoming more like a football score than a basketball score.
Gotta be careful about talking smack.
I know, so
I
I feel like I have to just make amends to the Wordle gods here publicly and apologize.
That reminds me of how I went to Ohio State.
The Ohio State.
The Ohio State University, because it's a great university if there's a the at the front of the name, and my wife went to the University of Wisconsin. I've made the mistake in past years if the Buckeyes are coming to play the Badgers at Camp Randall that if I talk smack, Wisconsin has an upset. So I'm very humble about the Badgers. They've had a bad year this year, but say they're going to come back.
And maybe Tom, maybe you're coming back. Those 2s and 3s are in your future too.
Well, I'm hoping that by coming clean on the podcast,
go,
again, the gods will let the right words come to mind. But it's been a struggle. And Paul, I know you're a Wordle person as well, correct?
I am a Wordle person. I do. I've been playing pretty regularly in a little family group for a long time.
Little family competition.
Little family competition, and it's fun. It's fun to see everyone scores in the mornings, and it's a good it's a good daily habit. And in fact, I kind of will find myself feeling really bummed out if I skip a day, like my streak is over, and I'm like, oh man, I forgot to do it. Yeah,
that whole streak thing. I'm all for it if you're doing it, but I don't think you should get penalized if you forget one day. All right, well, we're going to go into the Newmarkers Newsmakers in a moment, but Paul, you've got a bit of a Medtech Innovator announcement. You're CEO of Medtech Innovator. Take a moment to remind our listeners, no doubt they know what Medtech Innovator is, but tell us about Medtech Innovator, and let's get into your news real quick.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Medtech Innovator is an accelerator, but we're a downstream accelerator for anyone who isn't familiar with us. So we're kind of we're like the graduate school for early stage medtech companies. So you've gotten out of the academy and you've got your prototypes and some early evidence and maybe even some significant clinical evidence, and you want to make sure that you get to the market with as much value as possible. That's what Medtech Innovator is about, and we make sure that good companies succeed and get into the market and with as much value as possible. So we got a great program that has an incredible track record, and that's not me bragging about us. That's just the companies that we've selected over the years. We have about a 4% acceptance rate, so it's super competitive. And the companies that come out of Medtech Innovator on the other side are the leaders in our industry. And one great measure of that is looking back at last year. Out of all of the venture dollars that went into, and angel dollars that went into the medtech sector, about $1 in $4 went to a graduate of Medtech Innovator. So it's a good group to be in. Let's put it that way. Our companies are, they raised over $2 billion, I think it was last year alone. So yes. It's a good place to be. It's a great peer group, incredible corporate mentorship from some of the leading strategics, companies like Edwards and Johnson & Johnson, Olympus, and more. We've got 30 corporate partners. They're there to help work with startups and make sure their products are the kinds of things they're going to want to acquire someday, and not something they're going to have to completely tear apart and redo. So, that's their alignment, is making sure the startup ecosystem turns into great products. And that's Medtech Innovator in a nutshell. And the news is that our application has opened for this next cycle. And that's a big deal. So this is the time to be applying. You just go to medtechinnovator.org/apply, or just go to our homepage and you can use the link at the top. But there's 3 different programs to choose from, all happening at the same time. There's the Medtech Innovator flagship, which is focused on companies that want to enter the U.S. market as their primary market. And let's face it, most people want that. And then the second program is our Asia Pacific program, which is for companies that want to enter the Asia Pacific markets as a primary market. And then lastly, we have BioTools Innovator, which is focused on life science tools companies, those omics and sequencing and protein, synthesis, all that cool stuff that goes into helping to make the drugs and the biologics. Everything but the drugs and biologics themselves falls under BioTools Innovator.
Wow.
And that program's amazing. This will be our third year for that program. All three applications are happening at the same time. Deadline is January 31st. And you might say, oh, that's great. I have two more months to go. But we start the first phase of Medtech Innovator is a road tour. We invite about 20% of the applicants to pitch us in person in some of these big mega conference, little mini conference things that we're doing now. I say mega because they're bigger than they used to be, but we invite 60 companies at a time to a 2-day event where they get to pitch all of our corporate partners and others and investors. And about 20% of the applicants will get to do that, which is a huge deal for them. Huge value. And we start filling those slots as soon as the beginning of January.
I was saying it reminds me of the old saying we had back in my drum bugle corps days, which was like, to be early is to be on time, to be on time is to be late is to be left. So they better get moving now or the bus is gonna pull away.
I'm going to quote you on that. I'm going to put a picture of you on the homepage and say, Chris Newmarker, to be on time is to be late.
That's right.
I like that. So that's the way we say it, because if you wait till January 31st, you're going to miss our first pitch event. You're going to be slotted into the one that we do later, and that probably means more travel or something else. So it's better to get in there early for sure. And if you do apply at the deadline, like about half the people do, you just get a little less selection.
We'll get into who can apply, who the candidates are, what type of companies you're looking for in a couple of minutes. But Chris, why don't we roll out the Newmarkers Newsmakers, and we can come back and revisit this in a couple of minutes. So what is number 5, Chris Newmarker?
Well, number 5 on the list. This is a company we all know well. They even had people speaking at DeviceTalks West recently. Moon Surgical. They got their first FDA 510K for their surgical robotic system, and it's just a really cool type of technology they have, because it's kind of more of like a robotic surgical assistant. So the surgeon does what he or she always does, but you have a robotic assistant backing you up in the procedures, which we've all heard about, like shortages in healthcare staffing. So a robotic surgical assistant, it seems like that could be something that we could increasingly see demand for over the years.
That's great. Nope. Fascinating company. We had CEO Anne Ozdois on the podcast a few months ago, and looking at their history, they raised the a $31.3 million Series A in June, and you reported that back in June, Chris. And they had some great investors, including JJDC from Johnson & Johnson. So Johnson & Johnson placing another bet in the surgical robotic space, and of course Steve Osterly and Fred Mall are on Moon Surgical's board of advisors. So they got a lot of firepower behind them. Paul, I believe you know a little bit about Moon Surgical.
I do. It's very appropriate that they're in the top 5 for this week, because they made the top 5 at Medtech Innovator over 1,000 companies last year in 2022. They made our top 5. They made it to the finals this past October. And Moon Surgical is an amazing company. Just has continued to blow everybody away. I can't believe they've already got a 510K. That's just crazy. Considering what they're doing over there. They've gone so fast. When they started Medtech Innovator in June of 2022, they weren't even doing clinical cases yet. They have done I can't remember the exact number. It's like in the 30s, I believe, human cases and like 5 different indications at this point. Like they are just executing like crazy. And the fact that they've gotten 510K clearance is really incredible. What an amazing team. And, they have like the first employee at Auris, or at the company, they're literally just one of the most exciting robotics companies. And they're not what we all think of when we think of robotics.
Well, their product Maestro, as Chris, you indicated, is less of sort of a something that performs surgery, but rather will assist a surgeon in a surgery. So the robot is there to hold something in place, taking the place of a surgical assistant or I guess a less experienced surgeon who would be assisting that surgeon. Yeah,
every one of the cases they've done has been done without an assistant.
Wow.
Everyone, from the first clinical case to the case, I've talked to several of the surgeons who've been using the system, and they say, like, I can sit at the bedside. I do everything I normally do with a patient. I just have 2 extra arms.
That's awesome.
And I don't need any help. They're like, it's incredible. From the first case until where they are All their clinical sites just didn't schedule an assistant. No one else in the room, and they've done it just fine. It's incredible. It's really an amazing piece of technology.
And Chris Newmarker, we should point out that this selection of the Newsmakers this week was blinded, double blinded. Paul did not have any influence on the selection of these companies, correct? This was all you.
This was looking at our analytics and like what stories were getting the most views from our audience, and and this.
Want to let folks know that there's no.
I just found out about them this morning. That was my first
no hanky panky going on. No.
We didn't let Paul. We didn't let Paul slip in a company just to this is. There we go.
Not at all.
Hi, everybody. Tom here. Hope you're looking forward to some time off this holiday season. But before we go, as mentioned, we have a couple of podcasts coming up, and we also have 2 more Device Talks Tuesdays coming up next week. And given we are in the midst of the holiday season, I took a favorite of mine and turned it into a little promo for our upcoming session. So here we go. 'Twas a week before the holiday break when all through Medtech, not a PowerPoint was showing, not one single deck. When out at Device Talks Tuesdays arose 2 great discussions. APP will tell engineers how 3D metal printing can help them innovate more quickly. And PSN Labs is taking time to explain changing regulatory requirements for biocompatibility. So spring to your laptop, your PC, or the tablet on your nightstand. Register now for free. Watch both presentations live or on demand. That's it, folks. Go to DeviceTalks.com for more information about both programs. One on December 13th, Tuesday at 4 p.m., and one on December 15th, Thursday at 4 p.m. Let's roll on to number 4, Chris Newmarker. What's next?
Well, number 4 on the list is the CEO of Butterfly Network is stepping down, and they've had some disappointing financial results this year. They've had to adapt a plan to extend their cash runway that included some workforce reductions. They were the first probably really big SPAC that we covered just a few years ago, and it's tough being a public company, and I know we were like our SPAC's going to last, and it's kind of feeling like they're passing away for now, but here's to hoping things can improve over Butterfly Network, because the technology has always sounded really cool. Like this idea you could have a handheld ultrasound tech that you could get all ultrasound into emergency rooms and all kind of places where they haven't used it as much, and hopefully diagnose things faster. If they're wheeling you into a hospital, they can find out what's going on. So
well, it is certainly cool technology, and just speaking generally about SPACs, there's always that concern that they get onto the public markets with less strenuous vetting than traditional IPOs, and perhaps in the broader case of the SPAC class, we're seeing some of that. I don't want to tie that directly to Butterfly Networks because I don't really know exactly what their difficulties have been, but hopefully the CEO transition will turn things around. Paul, any insights on Butterfly?
I mean, I think it's kind of what you said, right? Yes, they're a public company, but through the SPAC vehicle, so there's a little less. I don't know if you want to call it diligence, whatever, that kind of goes with that route. It's you're less under the microscope, but I don't think that's really I don't think it's the SPAC is really the issue here. I think it's just the early stage, effectively still kind of reasonably, not super early stage, but still, smaller company effectively. And in a time when, people are hunkering down and making changes, they miss I think they missed their earnings, right? Yeah. So, I think that when that kind of stuff starts happening, people start getting nervous. And so I'm sure that, they're just making some changes to try and ensure this company's future.
Yeah. And their founder and board chair, Jonathan Rothberg, is going to be serving as interim CEO during the transition period. Yeah, we'll see if they end up tapping somebody else to be their new CEO. It could very likely be somebody we know. So
I do feel like we've watched Butterfly kind of grow up on this podcast. You and I started talking about it like early on, like the first or second episode when we started doing this of what they were working on, and then we watched it go public, and now we're seeing this happen. So hopefully we'll be reporting on some good news in the future. So Paul, circling back to Medtech Innovator, and we've had this conversation on the podcast before. What kind of companies are you looking for? You or startups you're looking for? You're not looking for two people with a PowerPoint who have an idea. You're looking for someone a little more seasoned. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's why I kind of refer to us, right, as like the graduate school.
Yeah.
We're looking for people who have a team. So that's one very important criteria. It can't be a all part-time team. That's not going to fly. You got to have someone who's full-time because we're going to be giving you a ton of guidance, and we want to make sure there's people that have received that guidance. So a team is important. Doesn't have to be the perfect team or the full team. It just has to be a team who can execute, at least during our program, which is a 4-month program. We're looking for companies that have some kind of a prototype, at least. And so again, it might not be the finished clinical product that's already in design freeze. Most of them aren't. In fact, we like those because we can still get in there and roll up our sleeves a bit and say, hey, if you made this change, that's going to have a big impact. So we love to be able to give them feedback. I mean, that's one of the big reasons the corporates who are our partners do this is it gives them a chance to put their stamp on a product at a time when they're still able to receive our guidance and make a change. So they don't, as I said, they don't have to go rebuild it after an acquisition someday, which does happen a lot otherwise. So we're looking for somebody who's got those prototypes, and then early evidence. So someone says, hey, we built a prototype. We haven't tested it yet on anything. We have no idea if it works. We'll probably wind up saying, come back next year. We'd like to see some evidence that this is going to work. It could be bench data, human data, cadaver, whatever it is, animal data, something that tells us a little bit of okay, it looks like it works. And of course, I'm leaving out that, this has got to be, an unmet medical need that we think has, significant opportunity. And that doesn't mean it has to be $1 billion market. It just has to mean that there's going to be demand for this product. I don't think any of us like, back in things where you have no idea if people really want this. We're going to have to go be missionaries and convince people they need something. That's not an enviable position to be in. So we like things that there's a significant pull for as well.
It kind of sounds like the companies that you bring in now are the types of companies that a big medtech company maybe 15 years ago would have just acquired, but they've become a lot more risk averse. And it kind of really sounds like you're providing this really nice bridge to get them to that extra point, where they can then get acquired or go public or, do some kind of exit, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely that finishing school. We're definitely that, because we live in a world today where everybody wants more evidence, whether it's the customers, whether it's, reimbursement, everybody wants to see some validation, and they're less likely, it still happens, but they're less likely to buy that company, super pre-revenue. They're looking for some evidence. So, we whip them into shape. We make sure that we have a huge component of Medtech Innovators, our value program, where they all get coached by multiple value coaches who are, market access professionals and who either work at the big companies or they're consultants in some cases, but, we whip them into shape. So, we challenge all of their assumptions. We make sure that they really understand their value propositions and can back it up. So that's a big part of what we do. So I agree, Chris. I mean, this is definitely, if you turn the clock back 15 years ago, maybe somebody would have picked these companies up earlier, and with some more risk, but everyone is super risk averse.
Well, that's what you're looking for. And again, they can go to medtechinnovator.org to apply. And the deadline is the end of January, but start now. Don't wait.
Start now. And actually, one other criteria I should have mentioned, and then we can move on, is that, people will say, well, what stage are you looking for? And we're looking for companies from a funding stage, anywhere from companies that have, kind of friends and family seed type money, maybe a large grant, all the way up through Series C, as in Charlie. So there are, about 30% of our companies each year are in the market. They're much further than you might think. And they still greatly benefit from this program because it gives them access to the strategics, funding, visibility at 3 or 4 conferences in many cases, all sorts of things where nobody else gets that visibility, but our companies at Abiomed and Wilson Sonsini and DeviceTalks. And Great
program. All right, Chris Newmarker. What's number 3 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers?
Number 3 on the list, we've got news. Actually, this our managing editor Jim Hammerand broke some news on mass device and medical design and outsourcing this week, and the roots of the news break went back to DeviceTalks West.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! We break news at DeviceTalks West, but it all started at DeviceTalks West because Jim was talking to Avail Medsystems CEO at the show, and he was talking about how they're getting involved in third party software. That they had plans to roll out their first third-party software integration, and now here we are. They've got a deal with Medtronic neurovascular that's worth tens of millions of dollars. And Avail systems allow you to get into the operating room and collaborate with surgeons while they're doing procedures. I mean, just great for all kinds of networking. And Medtronic thinks this could up the game with all the collaboration, and boost some innovation in the stroke space. So really cool. We need to see what next medtech company partners with Avail in this way.
Yeah, well, I had a conversation with Dan Hawkins, and he's the CEO of Avail Medsystems, and Dan Voles, the head of Medtronic Neurovascular. We'll have the Medtronic Talks podcast out next week with that interview. But this is something that not only has this been used on procedures, but where they're really seeing a great opportunity for Medtronic as part of their CoLab platform, where they're trying to foster innovation in the neurovascular space. So
right.
The immediacy of Avail, which is a system that basically has audio and video and is in the OR, enables engineers and entrepreneurs who are working with surgeons to really observe neurovascular procedures as they're happening, so they can hopefully discover new ideas or vet ideas that they're working on. And as they'll point out in the interview, and we'll run it next week, it's really hard to do with obviously neurovascular, because if someone's got a stroke, it's not a scheduled procedure. You can't have an engineer who's planning to spend the day in the OR, as you maybe can do with cardiac ablation or something that's a little more isn't as time sensitive. When you got to go in a stroke, it's an emergency, and you're working fast. So this will give engineers at Medtronic sort of immediate access to procedures, so they can see how they can improve upon their products.
I mean, they were saying, the Avail consoles don't record the procedures, but if a neurosurgeon's encountering something that's like a rare situation and they're trying to figure out, they can conference in Medtronic engineers to see for themselves like what's going on with the stroke patients. So I mean, just really, could be profoundly impactful. And
this is one that actually had a little tie to Medtech Innovator, in that technology, the technology at Avail that we're talking about, some of it had its early days as NewRep, the original company, NewRep, NUREP, and Avail acquired that technology. But NewRep was, its origin was, eliminating the reps from the OR and putting all this really cool, ability to observe and have real time interaction remotely, and we're seeing it deployed now. So that's really exciting.
Well, Avail kind of came onto the scene in 2020 as one of the companies that was helping to keep sales reps connected with surgeons during COVID when they were locked out. But their history precedes that, certainly, and they have had long time plans. They're kind of acting on long time plans to really strengthen this, to create this telecommunication connection between surgeons and those outside the OR. So again, it's really, we've been talking about it as sort of in a sales rep strategy. We obviously talk about it in an ability for surgeons to consult and to watch each other and help each other, and hopefully that raises everybody's game. But it's really exciting to think about it from the engineer point of view, where more engineers will get more access to live cases. And Medtronic is really expecting this to increase or accelerate their ability to innovate and to get to treat even more patients more quickly than they had previously thought possible. So exciting stuff. We're going to take a break from this conversation to bring in our sponsor, Nordson Medical. Once again, I'm visiting with David Sagans, Vice President. David, tell me, what type of medical device companies do you work with?
We work closely with customers to develop primarily interventional med device solutions that enable procedures such as transcatheter valve replacement, cardiac ablation, kyphoplasty, stent deployment, among many other therapies. Our solutions include both finished devices, including delivery systems, balloon catheters, and cannula, as well as component offerings that include engineered shafts, medical balloons, extrusions, heat shrink tubing, and complex nitinol components. With expertise ranging from finished devices to individual component optimization, we are uniquely positioned to partner with a broad range of customers covering the entire med device lifecycle.
Thanks, Dave Sagans. We'll hear a little more from Nordson Medical a little later in the podcast. Once again, if you'd like to find out more right now about Nordson Medical, go to nordsonmedical.com.
So number 2 on the list, this was exciting as well. We finally had the FDA clearance for the Dexcom G7, their next gen continuous. Yeah, it was really, really good to see this. So, and it's been very anticipated in the diabetes community in the United States. So
I'm giving an extra woohoo here because I am a diabetic. And I've been wearing a G6 now for a while. And
oh, wow.
I'm so excited about that G7. I can't tell you how excited I am because it takes a whole step out of the process. Like, it used to be a 2-step thing. You put the sensor on, then you snap in the transmitter. Now it's 1 step. It's like half the size. It warms. As a diabetic, I can tell you the worst time is that period where you have to warm up for 2 hours right now. And you're like, oh man, I don't have any data for the next 2 hours. But this one warms up in like 30 something minutes. It's incredible.
Oh, wow.
It's awesome.
That's interesting insight. So what is that 1 step that it's eliminating? And is it a matter of time that you're saving or discomfort that you're avoiding or both?
So the step process is when you first get the device, you have a thing that looks the G6, you have a thing, the applicator to inject the little sensor, looks a lot like an old school computer mouse. And you put it on your arm and there's a little button you click and it kind of makes a stapling sound and, it injects the sensor, which by the way, I've never felt. Like I always think I did it wrong because I can't even feel it going in. I just hear the click.
Wow.
And then you're left with like the plastic applicator piece and the adhesive, and you take your Bluetooth transmitter, and you snap that on. So that's the second step. It's a 2-step process, and you have to you're separately prescribed the transmitter, which, every 90 days you need a new one, and the sensors, you need a new one every 10 days. So it just adds complexity, right? The new thing, it's all 1 step. You just the transmitter and is now disposable. So that's a super cool thing. You just pop it on, 1 step, no snapping on, no separate prescription to deal with. So it just takes a little more complexity out of the process.
Oh, that's great.
And you and I have had a conversation about how this has really helped you and really changed your life. I remember we've been talking on the phone. You've been out taking walks because you knew you had to bring certain things up and certain things down. What is having the G6 done for you, Paul?
It's amazing. So it lets me manage the disease without insulin, which is incredible. So basically, in my particular case, I was diagnosed at 49 as a diabetic, and I thought it was type 2, but it turned out to be type 1. I have the GAD antibody attack, so that's an autoimmune disease. And now I'm 54 and I've still never used insulin, which is incredible. So if I wasn't doing anything and I was just eating my burgers and bread and all that stuff, I would be at huge risk for, all sorts of, secondary complications. But because I have the G6, in the old days, I used to prick my finger. I don't know. In the beginning, it was lots of times during the day, and eventually I got lazy and I'd be doing it, at most once a day. And, you get one data point. Now I'm getting a data point every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes, which is incredible. And so I can immediately look down, which I do. I have on the desktop on my iPhone, I have the little Dexcom app, and I can see my numbers at all times. And immediately I can go, oh, I just ate that, whatever. And my blood sugar is now, instead of being 150 or 140, where it should be for me, it's 220 or 200 or something. And I go, great, I'm going to go take a walk and call Tom. And it's amazing because that's all it takes. I used to think you have to run, you just walk. And my blood sugar at the end of the walk will be 100. And I know I'm fine, and I keep checking it, and I'm like, great, I can go back to work. If I didn't have that, I'd be walking around at 220 or whatever, for the rest of the day. And causing all sorts of potential risk, So it's a game changer. I know that word is used around. It is a game changer because I can completely manage my disease with this device. Without this device, pricking my finger once or twice a day, I would have no idea where my blood sugar really is. You just get the average. And that average can be a real misleading number. You want the real time. So continuous data is huge. And that's where Dexcom shines because it's Bluetooth, and it's always transmitting to my phone versus, some other devices where you have to scan them. So you have to go out of your way to go find the number. And although it's still pretty awesome, this is just totally passive, continuous data. And everyone I've talked to, I know a lot of diabetics, and they're all using the Dexcom G6. So we're all excited about the G7.
Because it sounds like there's like some real improvements there that are just going to make it even easier to use, which that's just awesome.
And to give a disclosure, Dexcom is a Medtech Innovator partner. So, they are one of our corporate partners. But I would, they were my corporate partner for 2 years, a year and a half before I was using the product myself. So, I only became an active G6 user in the last about 4 months. So, and it's, as I said, I was managing in a really terrible way up until then. I got the G6 and my life has been completely different, totally altered.
That's great.
So with the disclosure, I'm telling you.
That's very noble of you to bring that up.
Yes.
That device changer.
Good.
This is a device that I proudly tell my friends, like, I really wish you guys could get this device. It'd have to be off label, but because anybody's blood sugar goes up when they eat various meals, and all the, there's a massive population that's pre-diabetic. And, and this is, I think, will be a game changer for them. So again, this is off label advice, but I think I would love everyone to walk around and you see, and if it's not the G6, you'll see all these wellness ads on your Instagram coming up now for similar types of devices that monitor your blood sugar. I think all of us are going to be monitoring our blood sugar one way or another in the future.
Absolutely. That's good. Great point. So Chris says Dexcom expects to initiate its U.S. launch for G7 in early 2023. So
woohoo!
It's coming,
Here we
Paul.
go.
Thanks for sharing that. I really do appreciate that.
That's great.
It's we Chris and I babble on about what all this great tech means for people with diabetes, and it's it always helps to actually talk to someone who either has it or knows someone who has it and can really explain the day-to-day work that goes into managing this disease. It's unbelievable.
Agreed. I feel that way about everything. I think the patient voice is just not heard enough.
Amazing.
And, that's a big thing we're going to be at Medtech Innovator this year, is, increasing the patient voice in our program. So you'll be seeing some stuff about that in the future. Little teaser.
That's great.
Get me some ideas for DeviceTalks as well. All right.
Yes, indeed.
Let's roll into number one, Chris.
Well, number one on the list is we've got Fresenius Medical Care's CEO is leaving just after 2 months in the top spot. The company's promoting from within to replace her, but they this year just in recent months we're announcing that they were expecting net income for the year to decline at a percentage rate ranging from the high teens to the mid 20s. And they were blaming slow results improvements to their North American healthcare services operations. I mean, we just, it's just another example how we do have like a lot of big medtech companies like dealing with these, macroeconomic headwinds with, the, staffing shortages at health providers and whatnot. And, we'll see how things go, moving forward with, new CEO for Fresenius Medical Care, Helen Giza.
No, it was an interesting transition. I've talked to Carla Crew. She had been previously at Philips. I don't know what goes into this sort of transition. Paul, do you have any insights on why someone speaking generally about such a thing, when a CEO takes a job and then gets in there and doesn't stay around very long? Is it a discovery of the company discovering something about the CEO discovering something about the company? Or a mixture of the two, or either or? I imagine it's all of those things. They were saying
strategic differences.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like when someone says, hey, I'm going to go spend more time with my family. Yeah. It feels like one of those kinds of statements. I usually, I think that, reading between the lines, as you said, Chris, about the strategic differences, it seems like it just wasn't a fit. And it wasn't, I doubt that she came in and recognized something horrible about Fresenius. I don't think that's the case. So I think it just, wasn't a fit for her. Who knows why? Or it wasn't a fit for the company. It wasn't a fit for somebody. She was only there for 2 months. So that's a pretty quick something just wasn't right. And I don't know what that was, but that, the good news is they made a quick decision. Whoever made the decision made a quick decision. And that's probably the most important thing. The piece of advice our CEOs always give the new CEOs coming into Medtech Innovator is nobody regrets the amount of time when they let somebody go. And again, I don't know what happened in this case, but I'm just saying in general, they always think, I wish I'd done that sooner, whatever that is. So making a quick decision, I'm saying nobody regrets the quick decision. They all regret saying, oh, we waited a year, we waited 6 months, whatever. We knew it wasn't right. So whether it was, her idea, whether it was the board's idea, whoever's idea it was, I'm sure whoever it is happy that they made a quick decision. And I'm sure Fresenius will benefit from that.
Yeah.
Fair point.
And the wild thing here is we had so much of this news this week that there was some huge news this week that
we were going to call you out on this, Chris Newmarker. Both Paul and I were wondering, what about
Mike Mussallem?
What about Mike Mussallem?
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
You really have to blame your readers, I think, right? Because this is what they're reading. So
what I suspect is like Edwards, CEO, he intends to retire from the CEO spot next year. They're promoting from within, for the new CEO. My best guess is I'm going to sell him 70. So maybe our readers were like, or unless you're running for president, you might want to relax a little bit more in your 70s. So maybe that's what was going on, but big news. I mean, he's like one of the major CEOs in the industry, and he really helped. He played a huge role in Edwards, becoming just like this dominant player in TAVR that it is, and there's all kinds of other really cool catheter delivered valves that Edwards is really active with. So
it's an amazing company, and and Mike Mussallem is just an incredible presence in our industry, and I can say even from the startup side, he's just at all the conferences, he's up there. He, in fact, this year, when we opened up our 10th anniversary Medtech Innovator Finals this year, Mike opened up the session. He came out and did the intro and, talked about innovation. He's just a huge supporter of innovation. He's always been very involved in Stanford Biodesign and other programs in Orange County. I mean, he is just a force.
Wow. Yeah.
So I was shocked that it wasn't in the top 5 because it is the end of an era. And,
really?
I'd be clicking that story for sure.
I clicked on it. I did.
Yeah. Right. So, I think maybe he's number 6. I don't know where he fell on the list.
He was really, really close number 6. I mean,
he was actually number 6. You're right. Yeah.
But, I think you're probably right. I guess that the readers, it's, if anything is less surprising, it's probably that, Butterfly CEO stepping down. You're like, oh, what's that
surprising,
about?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Fresenius, exiting after 2 months. What is that about? But, so, maybe it just fell just slightly below that on the interest level, but I'm glad we're acknowledging it because Mike Mussallem really is, kind of just a huge force in our industry, and I'm glad he made the top 6.
Yeah, maybe we should have just expanded the Newsmakers to 6 this week.
Well,
maybe this is the mistake. Now I'm second guessing.
I think we just did it.
We just did it. There we go.
Yeah, right. I think we just this is a co-host choice award, so we'll give that to Mike Mussallem, and
we're making one of those quick decisions right now.
Exactly.
Number 6,
we're correcting the problem, and I did, Paul. I like the fact you mentioned Stanford Biodesign. I mean, he brought in Todd Brinton from Stanford Biodesign. We had Farzad Azampour at DeviceTalks West. I mean, these are people who are in the trenches of innovation, and now they're guiding strategy at a big company like Edwards. I really love that marriage and that commitment to the early stage tech. So it's going to be. I've actually never had the opportunity to interview him, so maybe I'll reach out and we get him on the podcast before he. Well, he's still going to be. He's going to be
staying on his board chair.
Yeah. Board chair. Yeah. So he'll still be involved. So we have some time.
Still there. It's kind of like I've noticed that a lot with companies. When a CEO is retiring, is like they'll stay on a bit as board chair. So he's going to be a non-executive chair of the Edwards board. Paul, do you know the new incoming CEO?
So I don't know him. I mean, I've read the article, so I've seen that, but I personally don't know him, and I'm looking forward to getting to know him. And I know they have a couple of other people they've elevated as well in the organization to take on some additional, higher senior roles in the organization. They're making some changes. I feel like it's one of those things like you see in a lot of companies where somebody leaves and you're like, we need 3 people to replace him. I kind of feel like that's the case at like in Edwards with Mike Mussallem. I think you got to get split up that responsibility quite a bit.
And it was interesting too that they're promoting, the new CEO is currently the VP and general manager of the of Edwards transcatheter mitral and tricuspid therapies business, which that's really been their like next big thing. I mean, so obviously they dipped out and pulled up a VP who's been leading this next big thing. Now he's going to be leading it as the head of the entire company.
Now I'm very happy to bring you our interview with Celine Martin, Company Group Chairman of Cardiovascular and Specialty Solutions Group at Johnson & Johnson. But first, our last message from our sponsor, Nordson Medical. Dave Zakantz, how do you help your OEM customers?
Typically, we start at the front end of the device development process, working with customers to understand the problem and develop a unique solution. Once a design solution is reached, we leverage advanced modeling and proprietary testing to verify that the design meets performance requirements, ultimately taking the product into mass production through our rigorous transfer and validation process. Nordson Medical makes the device and the differentiated components in the device, elevating us in the market through a highly configurable manufacturing platform, providing our customers with significant design freedom and flexibility from a single source.
Finally, it sounds like you have a long history of success and a great record of growth. Tell us, where do you see Nordson Medical going in the future? What kind of growth do you see happening?
Here at Nordson Medical, we're constantly looking to expand our capabilities in ways that add value to our customers, continually evaluating new technology, equipment, and processes to enable new solutions that make the devices better and more cost-effective. A prime example of this was the addition of Fluorotech business to our portfolio last year. This competency in fluoropolymer extrusion and PTFE allows us to offer a more comprehensive line of solutions. And when combined with our other proprietary technologies, it allows us to increase our responsiveness while providing unique solutions that only Nordson can deliver. Additionally, we are always looking to optimize our footprint with the right capabilities in the right locations. Along these lines, an exciting new step for Nordson Medical is the new state-of-the-art manufacturing facility opening in Tecate, Mexico. We've been manufacturing in Mexico for the last 16 years, and the new Tecate facility reflects a commitment to provide our customers with a cost-optimized solution for full device manufacturing. Combined with our U.S. locations, we provide rapid development and manufacturing options from our U.S. sites, and as a product transitions into greater market acceptance, we can readily transfer the production into our cost-optimized Tecate site. This is a real win for our customers because we can provide rapid development at launch and a defined path to an enhanced cost position.
Thanks for joining us, Dave Zakantz, and thanks for sponsoring this episode, Nordson Medical. You can find more information on their website, nordsonmedical.com. Well, Celine Martin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to learn about the business that you're overseeing at J&J, but would love to first understand your path into medical devices. People take many different ways to get where they are today. So what was the first thing that interested you in the medical device industry, and what was your first job in the medical devices?
So growing up, I wanted to be a physician, and I grew up in Europe, and I was fortunate enough that my parents had friends and family members in the medical field. So they had me immersed in the hospital for a couple of days to shadow physicians to make sure I would validate my interest in the space. And I'm glad they did, because what I came to realize is I want to be in healthcare, but I want to be way more impactful than addressing one patient at a time.
Interesting.
And so many years later, when J&J was hiring on campus during my MBA program, I realized that I could actually fulfill my ambitions to touch millions of patients by being part of the medical device industry. So that's where it started. And my first job, I was a sales rep for Ethicon Endosurgery in the surgical field.
That's amazing. So in that time between your following the physician for a couple of days and sort of understanding that wasn't the right fit, did you have in your mind that I want to get into a product-related field in healthcare, or did you just, you kind of had a sense of where you wanted to go, and then you connected with the folks at Ethicon, and that sort of put all the pieces together for you?
I knew I wanted to be in healthcare, and I knew I wanted to do something special. And when Ethicon Endo was hiring, those were the early years of endoscopic surgery, and minimally invasive techniques were in full development. And I realized that we're about to change the world, and I wanted to be a part of it.
And you've spent your entire career at the different businesses within Johnson & Johnson?
I have been with J&J for 27 years, indeed, across many different segments, always part of medical devices, or now Medtech. I touched practically all the segments outside of orthopedics. I lived in Europe and then moved to the US, East and West Coast, and I touched many functions, big companies, small companies, companies we acquired, companies we divested. I went through many different business cycles over the 27 years.
That's amazing. So I'm sure you're asked this a lot. What is your advice to J&J employees about not only staying at the company, but finding work that fulfills you at the company and making sure you're sort of moving your career along?
So the beauty of working for J&J is we work for the world's largest healthcare company. So there's a lot of opportunities to move around, experience new business environments without ever leaving J&J as a company. And my probably biggest advice would be to seek the experience and seek the opportunity, and think of your career as a toolbox where every experience adds to your experience and overall rounding. And I often advise my team members and my mentees to think along 4 variables. One is the variable of the function, moving around from commercial to program management to leadership. One being the company. Indeed, within J&J, especially Medtech, you have many different segments, from cardiovascular to surgery to orthopedics. To think across geographies, it's very, very beneficial to relocate from your own native country to a different geography and learn how to adapt. And that is, of course, the leadership side, and how you move from being an individual contributor to eventually managing people and eventually being a leader of a group. So I often say, when you move, think always about the move afterwards, but try to always move one variable at a time across those 4 variables. And I would say that in general, whether it be for technical functions or commercial functions, this formula actually works really well.
Interesting. I'm just curious, as you've moved from business to business, when you relocate to a new business with J&J, is it more familiar than it is different because there's sort of a DNA there, a foundation that it's still a J&J company? Or does it feel like you've actually moved into a different business and maybe it's less familiar than it is familiar?
I would say the credo is the anchor across all the businesses. So there's a big element of culture that remains the same and that is foundational. Having said that, each business is very different by product of the size, the business dynamics, the technology per se, and the formula to be successful tends to be different depending on the business segments you serve. But the foundation culturally remains the same, and it's all credo anchored.
Interesting. So, and I just want to talk about the larger changes at J&J right now. You mentioned Johnson & Johnson Medtech, the separation from consumer. Johnson & Johnson will remain one of the biggest medtech players by far. But I'm curious, how are things feeling with the diversification and the separation? Is it feeling more directed because you're Johnson & Johnson Medtech now? Or does it feel the same as it did 2 years ago?
There's a number of changes going on within J&J, and I think we're opening up a new era under a new leadership with Joaquin Duato. Of course, the first big change is the announcement of spinning off the consumer health business outside of J&J in the course of 2023, and we announced the new name, Kenvue. This is a great opportunity for the consumer team to be independent, running their business based on drivers and dynamics that are proper to consumer. And this allows then the rest of J&J to become a 2-sector-based company, pharmaceuticals on one side and Medtech on the other hand. And for Medtech in particular, the transition as an identity from MedDevice to Medtech is really inspired by our desire to really reimagine health and making sure that we do so in a world that is more and more digital and where technology is driving and enabling the future of our portfolio.
And has that focus, can you feel it sort of day to day in the medtech business? Like we are now a medtech business. We're not part of a larger global business. Does it feel different?
We remain a global business, undoubtedly. What feels different is the use of technologies, whether it be robotics in surgery and orthopedics, the use of machine learning, artificial intelligence. We are much more, from a product development standpoint, a software-enabled company when it comes to the technology architecture. I would also say that beyond the technology per se, there's a desire for J&J Medtech to be anchored with high growth categories and to be leaders in the segments where we play. And I'm sure you're aware that we recently announced the intention to acquire Abiomed with an intent to become a much bigger player in the cardiovascular category and making an impact for patients who suffer from heart failure.
No, that was an exciting purchase, and I did want to sort of ask about that. What is it like when a deal like that is announced? I'm sure you're well aware of it before any of us are, but it must be exciting to bring in a new exciting property like that and really energize an organization.
It was especially exciting for the MedTech employees, but I will say for myself as a leader who essentially took Cordis outside of J&J, to know that we're going back into cardiovascular care beyond the business we have in electrophysiology with Ballast and Swapster is very exciting. I do think that the amount of opportunities from an unmet need standpoint, the breadth of the population we can serve and the impact we can have is tremendous. And I'm very excited to see J&J back into CV in a big way.
I believe that, sure. Well, let's talk about your current business. Your company group chairman of Cardiovascular and Specialty Solutions Group. What are the businesses that you oversee? How large is your group? Give us a little bit of background on that.
So my group is called CSS, which stands for Cardiovascular and Specialty Solutions. And the way I typically frame it is there is a subset that is essentially J&J Interventional with Ballast and Swapster, a market leader in EP, particularly in atrial fibrillation, that is very big in size, more than $4 billion in revenue, and known for very rich pipeline and strong cadence of innovation. You may have heard of the Cardo system that is foundational as a 3D GPS navigation technology to navigate the catheters in the heart. The second company in the group interventional is Cerenovus, which serves stroke as a category. And we're playing in two segments, ischemic and hemorrhagic stroke, largely with catheters, stents, and devices that are essentially designed to remove clots. Then we have the surgical category called specialty surgery with Mentor, that is a leader in breast aesthetics, and Acclarent, a company dedicated to balloon sinuplasty to serve ENT patients. That is essentially the group of 4 companies I run, all based in Irvine and largely unified by a culture that is very unique to CSS. Focus on innovation is the oxygen of the business and truly enabling growth.
How do you, they're very diverse businesses as the leader of that group. How much time do you focus on do you encourage them to operate as different businesses since they're so different? You sort of want them to be close, to have their feet close to the ground or to operate close to the ground in each of their different businesses, or do you want them to function more as a more cohesive, larger unit? Or how do you sort of determine which way to go with that as a leader of a group like that?
The common theme across CSS turns out to be the location anchor, which is Irvine in Southern California, and the culture, as I mentioned earlier, related to the uber focus on innovation and growth. Having said that, all 4 businesses are run independently. They are very, very dedicated to their customer base with different technologies. I am running the group as essentially an ecosystem of companies based in Irvine, a team that is very focused and nimble, But wherever possible, if there's opportunities, I'm enabling the connections, one, from a talent standpoint. It's a great story for people in Irvine to know that they have ways to grow and develop without having to move away from Southern California. Second is on the technology side, there are technologies that can be leveraged in service of different applications. And I'll give you a prime example. I mentioned the Cardo system earlier for Biosense Webster, which is a navigation system designed for EP. We were able to leverage that core technology and know-how to develop a navigation system for ENT. And this was developed in less than 3 years, which is record time, considering that we're able to truly leverage the core technology components that were in existence for the Cardo system. So there are some benefits, but at the end of the day, those are very unique and different businesses, and we should give them the support and the specialization they deserve.
Indeed. Well, let's focus on a couple of the businesses and just find out what are some of the new developments in each space. Electrophysiology is obviously a space that's receiving a lot of attention. There's a lot of need for new products there. What is happening in that business? What has you excited about some of the new products there?
So for Biosense Webster, I want to start with the unmet needs, and the condition we serve is atrial fibrillation as a disease state. It's quite frankly an epidemic in the making when you think of the incidence of this disease. 1 patient out of 4 above the age of 40 will experience AF in their lifetime.
Wow.
We estimate that there's about 40 million AF patients today. And why is it important to address? 1, the quality of life is impaired by virtue of having regular AF episodes, and the condition can worsen over time. Second, you have 5 times more a risk of stroke when you have atrial fibrillation, and your mortality risk is also increasing. Now, we know that we have about 40 million patients today. By 2030, we expect that there will be 5 more million patients added to the pool every single year. And so today, while AF ablation is a standard of care, the penetration is sub 10%. So what's exciting about what we're doing is that over the last 10 years, we're able to truly establish AF ablation as a standard of care. We're able to take the procedure time down from what used to be 4 hours now to about an hour. The success rate went from 65% to now 90+%, but there is still a large intraoperator viability. So what we're doing as a company is we're really focusing in partnership with physicians on unmet needs. So we're looking at really focusing our innovation on 4 dimensions. Locate where to ablate, so know where you have to deliver energy, then deliver better lesions, simplifying the procedure, and eventually eliminating fluoroscopy. Mm-hmm. And we have a very, very exciting pipeline addressing all those unmet needs. Now, what's important to know is that while we have made great progress around the procedure time, there is still, again, intraoperator viability. And there is sometimes a risk of having very severe complications linked to the energy source you're using, radio frequency. So what's exciting about the EP space and what we're working on now is what you may have heard called irreversible electroporation, also called pulse field ablation. And essentially the idea is that the technology, the energy itself, can help discriminate between the myocardial tissue that you need to ablate versus other tissues like vascular structures or nerves that you don't want to ablate. And so now with this new energy source called pulse field ablation or IRE, you're essentially able to get much more in safety with a very quick procedure time without having to worry as much about complications. And so that's at the essence of the latest innovation trends in the EP space. And we as a company believe strongly that we're going to leverage the learnings and all the experience we have from radio frequency, which is a legacy technology, and apply all those learnings to the IRE portfolio. So we're going to have it Cardo enabled. We're going to have contact force. We're going to have tools like the ablation index, and we'll have a very solid catheter portfolio, a focal tip, a mid-size, and a single shot, really to have a full catheter offering that is PFA enabled, that essentially mirrors what we have today in radiofrequency. So we're in clinical studies as we speak, running an ID study in the US. We're just about to submit for CE mark in Europe. So this is the next frontier in the field of electrophysiology.
What is the market like for physicians in this space? Is there a sufficient number of clinicians who are available to treat patients who need it? Is that sort of a bottleneck that's kept from getting all the people who need the treatment? Or is it more of a case of diagnosis? People need to know that they need the treatment to get the treatment. Are there any sort of challenges outside of the technological that J&J is sort of working to help overcome?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of bottlenecks. I would say one of them is indeed the number of physicians readily available to treat those patients. Clearly, the volume of patients, candidates versus the number of physicians readily available to do cases, there's a mismatch. This is why we're pushing so much the efficiency so we can accommodate more cases per day. That's one. Second is patients are often lost in the shuffle of knowing they have AFib, but not knowing what they need to do. For example, they show up in the emergency room and they are being placed on medications forever. So we are doing work to raise awareness around the importance of really seeking ablation early after diagnosis, such that you have a chance to be truly treated and free of AF, versus living with a condition that will be worsening over time and really going from a condition that is called paroxysmal, which is a few episodes here and there, to chronic AF, which is very, very devastating. So we're really raising awareness around that for AF patients to make sure that they know where to go and they seek ablation as soon as possible.
Interesting. And final question, I know you've got a lot going on, but I did want to ask about your neurovascular business. It's another space where we've seen a lot of new products, a lot of interest, a lot of advancement. What is going on? What is new in your neurovascular business?
So on the neurovascular side, I would say the most exciting area we have relates to, number one, a new product launch for hemorrhagic applications, a new coil platform that is very exciting going into 2023. And on the ischemic side, it's moving from essentially having just a stent retriever technology to being able to do aspiration and making sure that more and more operators can tackle the stroke patients in a timely manner. Those are the exciting trends we see in the field of neurovascular.
Fantastic. And just final question. Anything else I should be asking about that you're excited about? You've got a lot going on. We talked a little bit about the Abiomed acquisition, and as you said, it's nice to see a move back into that space. Any final things you'd like to discuss?
We're really looking forward to welcoming Abiomed as part of the J&J family. We're weeks away from doing so, and we're very excited to truly go after heart failure, heart recovery. And I would say we're not going to stop there. There's so many more opportunities in the CV space. That is what excites me. The moment you have a foothold in the coronary space, I think there's many other things we could do, and that's going to be part of our growth agenda going forward.
Excellent. Well, it'll be exciting to watch and great for patients as well. Celine Martin, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, that is a wrap. Chris Newmarker and Paul Grant. Paul, you're our visitor. So tell folks where they can find you out there in social media land.
So I'm mainly on LinkedIn. So if you just go into LinkedIn and look for Paul Grant, if you do a search for Paul Grant Medtech Innovator, you'll find me for sure. I'm also on Twitter as Life Science VC.
That's right.
Little legacy there from my prior job. So you can find me there. But Medtech Innovator, Paul Grant, LinkedIn, that's where to find me.
All right. Chris Newmarker, where can folks find you?
Hey, I'm on LinkedIn, Chris Newmarker, just like a Newmarker. And that's where I am mainly as well. But yes, I'm on Twitter at Newmarker.
Excellent.
Not wordling yet.
You got to get your Wordle scores up there. I just restarted posting my Wordle scores at Medtech Tom. And of course, you can find me on LinkedIn, Tom Salemi, Salemi. Chris Newmarker, what do folks need to do right now?
You need to like, follow, subscribe.
That is absolutely right. And Paul, I would have asked you. I knew you got it last time, so I know you know the routine now. But folks need to like, follow, and or subscribe to this podcast so they can not only get DeviceTalks weekly, but they can get Intuitive Talks Stryker Talks, and we've got more podcasts.
Yeah.
Plural rolling out in 2023. So you want to make sure you sign up for the Device Talks podcast network so you don't miss all of these great insights on the medical device industry. We mentioned
smorgasbord of medtech insights and content.
Yeah, that'll be on the website. I think that's a real catchy one there. Yeah. So we'll
the word for the week is smorgasbord.
That's not going to fit in Wordle.
Yeah,
bored. You can get bored in there.
There you go, bored. Yeah.
So we'll have Paul back in a couple of weeks or probably a couple of months to talk about Device Talks Boston. As we mentioned, Medtech Innovator will play once again an integral part at Device Talks Boston. We're excited to have you back, Paul.
Excited to be back there. We're going to be debuting something we've never done before. We always like to innovate, and we're going to be launching the first of our investor showcases. So we're going to be bringing back some of the top companies from Medtech Innovator's graduates, our alumni, who are out there fundraising. And as I said, about 1 in 4 deals in the year that gets funded is a Medtech Innovator company. So you can bet that the quality will be high. So very excited to partner with you guys on that. That's going to be great.
Can't wait to hear more. All right, folks. Well, thanks for listening to this episode of the Device Talks Weekly Podcast. Tune in next week and the week after that for our final 2 episodes of 2022. Thanks for joining us, Paul.
Thank you. Great being here as always, and can't wait to be back.
Chris Newmarker.
Have fun as always. Take care, everybody.